Thank you, Robert, for asking me to reflect with this distinguished crowd of the Baptist Center for Ethics on the context and legacy of the Maston ethics tradition. What he did for all the Baptist family. He wanted with all his being to help Southern Baptists seize their opportunity to place their Christian convictions up against the brokenness of American culture, especially in the arena of race, and be examples of the faith by walking as Jesus walked. He served all of his adult life in Texas. His way of doing ethics spoke to the hearts and minds of Texas Baptists. The frontier Texas style could hear Maston's faith and his passion for the gospel and missions, and they were willing to give attention even when he made them very uncomfortable and sometimes even angry. Texas Baptists have been shaped by many forces. There was Z.N. Morrell, who came from Tennessee with his Bible, which he called his Jerusalem blade, and his Tennessee long rifle, which he called his carnal weapon. This frontier preacher fought off outlaws, Indians, and anti-missionary Baptists in order to see the desert, his somewhat pessimistic view of Texas, bloom like a rose. There was Thomas J. Pilgrim from New York, who started the first Texas Baptist Sunday School. There was Burleson and Baylor, Sam Houston and Noah T. Byers. There was George Truett and B.H. Carroll. And these Baptists gathered in Texas, and on their hearts was the need of a great state, as they would say when they tried to describe what their Baptist convention life would be about. The object of this body shall be to awaken and stimulate among the churches the greatest possible activity in evangelism, missions, Christian education, and benevolent work and enterprises. To cultivate closer cooperation among the churches, to promote harmony of feeling and concert of action in advancing all the interest of the Redeemer's kingdom. These were not timid men and women. They put their faith and hope for a new life up against the rugged reaches of the Texas forests and prairies, and they dreamed that God would make the land and their work fruitful. Thomas Buford Maston made the journey to Texas from Tennessee, as so many others before him had done. He came to study at the seminary in the Southwest. It was 1920, and after a year of study, he and the love of his life, Essie Mae McDonald, who had also completed her bachelor's degree at Carson Newman College, were married. T.B. Maston was committed to doing the will of God. It was the signature of his entire life and teaching. And he believed that God had not called him to be a pastor, but a missionary or a teacher. He and Essie Mae were both asked to teach in the seminary before even graduating. In 1925, his dissertation earned him a doctorate in religious education. The title, The Play Program for the Church. T.B. Maston was a practical and earnest churchman. He believed the church ought to make a difference in the everyday life of the people. What would become a passionate zeal to help Christians act out in their daily lives the will of God began in that basic understanding that churches could reach people through programs of recreation which could enrich their lives and witness as well. It was L.R. Scarborough, second president of Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, who saw great promise in his professor in the religious education department. He responded finally to Maston's conviction that Christian ethics ought to be located in the School of Theology. With that decision, Maston was determined to gain a Ph.D., and he entered Yale University in 1932 to study with H. Richard Niebuhr. His dissertation this time, at Niebuhr's urging, was the ethical and social attitudes of Isaac Backus. I knew none of this when in my first year at Southwestern I enrolled in his last class, Contemporary Issues in Christian Ethics. It was spring 1963, and he seemed small and weary as he entered the classroom. But soon his voice and the twinkle in his eye wrapped us all in the drama of a great teacher doing his work in the presence of his students. I knew that he had called Baptists to a new attitude toward racial equality, but I didn't know until later that his book, Of One, a study of Christian principles and race relations, had been published in 1946 by the Home Mission Board and was one of several writings in which he urged Southern Baptists to open their hearts and minds to include all of God's children in their lives. I had read in high school, as had thousands of Baptists my age, his practical book on Christian ethics for young people, right or wrong. I had learned from him that you could use the Bible to help answer the most practical questions of behavior. Who can forget, if you ever read it, how to apply the shadow test to everyday issues of right and wrong? But there I was, a beginning seminary student with the privilege to sit in his last class and consider with him the broad issues of world affairs from a biblical perspective. Some things I remember. Every concern could be addressed from a biblical perspective. There was nothing more important than discovering and following the will of God in one's life. The goal in life was to be a Jesus kind of person. And you could get people to see difficult truths best if you took the time to love them.